On the Communicators this week, we're featuring interviews with several telecommunications leaders. Jack Dorsey, co-founder of Twitter, Craig Newmark, founder of Craigslist, and Beth Novak of the White House Open Government Office. We spoke with these officials as well as others at the recent Government 2.0 Summit held here in Washington, D.C. This is a conference focused on how technology can be used to bring transparency to government. First off, here is the summit co-chair, Tim O'Reilly.
Tim O'Reilly, Government 2.0 Summit. What is it about?
Well, I realized some time ago that there was a huge upwelling of interest from software developers in actually getting access to government data. A lot of times the future occurs in fits and starts, and there are people, sometimes we call them hackers, I call them alpha geeks, who start playing with things and then later the industry catches up. And what I started noticing 4 or 5 years ago, there started to be all kinds of interesting applications using government data. So for example, one of the very first Google Maps mashups was from a guy who presented here, Adrian Holavati. It's called chicagocrime.org. And it was simply putting Chicago city crime reports onto a map. Now since then, we've seen that kind of application spread, and literally last year, the city of Washington, D.C. had an official contest to try to get new applications, and the winning app was putting government data on a map. So we saw all these things bubbling up, and I thought it's time to bring all the people together who are working on these kinds of forward-looking applications using government data to learn from each other, and also to tell a story about how we can start thinking of government data as a platform for innovation. There's a lot of analogies to what we did with Web 2.0, which is to tell a story about how the web was becoming a platform. And here we're trying to understand how can the government become a platform for new services to citizens. Because as Craig Mundy, the Chief Strategy Officer at Microsoft, and Chief Research Officer, said, it's really about how do we make new applications that are easier, where we're really delivering services to citizens. And what we're seeing are private citizens actually developing these applications, government now responding to the challenge. So it's really kind of a reprise of what we saw in the 90s when the government first got onto the web itself. But now we're starting to say, oh, what kind of infrastructure we need so that we can deliver, say, iPhone applications that give people local government data on the spot now when they need it? Or how can we take this huge government database and present it in a new way?
What has the new administration done for your efforts then?
Well, I think so. I think certainly the idea that Barack Obama was elected using social media was part of what brought a lot of attention to this field. But it's way more than federal officials using social media or agencies developing a cloud computing strategy. It's really about a new way of thinking about how do we bring services to citizens. And that's the heart of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Do you think that, what do you think the future is then, as far as the ability for government to use these platforms to get more information out to the average person?
Well, it's not just the ability of government to get information out, it's the ability of citizens to get the information out. Because of course, government getting the information out sounds like it's a one-way flow with government deciding what the citizens ought to get. And what's so important, and what I'm really trying to encourage here, is thinking about innovation. And a really good analogy is what's happened with the iPhone. The old style of building cell phone, smartphone apps was probably a lot like government procurement. Some group of people gets together with a few trusted vendors and they figure out what they're going to offer on the platform, and that's the phone. Apple, they put together this really interesting suite of applications, but then they opened the platform, and now inside a year and a half, they have 70,000 applications, an enormous outwelling of creativity. And the best government programs work like that. The federal interstate highway system didn't tell us what to put at the end of the highways. The internet, when they funded the internet, they didn't tell us what to put out at the endpoints. And I think a lot of what we're starting to see with services like data.gov and other initiatives coming out of the Obama administration, as well as out of many, many agencies, state and local governments, is really this idea of if we build new kinds of services, low-level services, actually the private sector, private individuals will actually be empowered to build new kinds of applications and new ways to access those services, things that the government wouldn't itself do. And I think there's a really interesting angle to this which is that when you think like a platform provider, you get more with less. You know, there's this debate between Republicans and Democrats, where the Republicans like to say, well, the Democrats want to spend always more money. Democrats say, hey, we're just trying to give more services. We want, you know, universal service. Well, if you do a platform right, you can actually spend more and achieve more. I mean, spend less and achieve more. You know, because what you're doing is you're building the infrastructure on which the marketplace actually builds and delivers the services. So what we're trying to do is take some of the best lessons from technology providers and then start to try to apply them to the problems of government, so that government's technology spending is more effective and more powerful and really more generative of private sector activity.
Tim O'Reilly, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, the use of social media was a large topic at the event, and one of the participants was Jack Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter.
Do you think the federal government gets the idea of how to use social media in its daily dealings?
I think it's getting it more and more. I've been really impressed by how the government has been participating in technologies like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, and really making themselves more approachable to every citizen. So I think it's been a learning process. I think it's an iteration, but we're moving very quickly.
When you say we, as far as, do you advise the government on how to best use Twitter?
If they ask me questions, then certainly I like to help, but as much as possible, we like to be hands-off so that people discover Twitter for themselves, and this is also the government. But I say we because, I consider myself to be building part of, this thing we call government, this thing we call United States of America, and that's just, that's part of where we are.
You say it's a learning process. What do you think the most valuable lesson a government can learn about how to use social media like Twitter?
I think the biggest thing is to update it as a human, not as an institution, but someone who works at an institution that is tasked with helping the citizens of this country and of the world. So if you remain on that level and there are no boundaries between that, and you engage people constantly, you listen, and you respond, that's really, really engaging, and that gets people really interested in what you have to say.
Does the White House consult with you on how to best use that, or various branches of the government?
No, that's all them, and that's how it should be. There is a discovery process for how the White House should use it. They're going to use it in a very particular way that's completely different than how my mother uses it, and that's great.
Because it's a source of media, in terms of other media, the White House or the federal government has offered regulation of some time when they feel sometimes it needs to be done. Do you ever fear regulation of Twitter?
We're always looking for what's coming and how we can improve this. So if that ever comes to be the case, then we will work with the policymakers to make sure that the communication stays unbiased and is regulated as necessary. But at the moment, the users, and the users are the government themselves as well, are really driving the technology and defining where it's going.
As far as how government deals with emerging technologies like Twitter, how's the best way they can work as far as the regulatory process? I know that some would advocate a light touch, some other people would advocate a more heavier touch. Right. What would your advice be?
I would open it up into a conversation and really make the process an iteration that is debated in public, so that we can all look at what's going on. We can all determine what the future of this communication is.
Tell us a little bit then, as far as you're in DC, you're visiting this conference. Are you making any visits, lobbying for Twitter in any case?
I'm just present, talking to people and listening for myself.
Who are you talking to?
Everyone. Everyone that will talk to me.
Are you surprised with the way Twitter has gone as far as a communications tool?
It's we knew that the concept was very large. It's something that I personally have been working with for some time. My co-founders helped start Blogger, so they've been working with this personal messaging for some time, and we knew this concept was very large. We did not know the velocity would be so quick. So we were caught a little bit by surprise of the velocity and how it's being used. But that's the most exciting thing, is people are defining what this means to them. People are building their own value on top of it, and they are determining where the technology goes. And that's awesome. But to create a system that allows for that is very rare and very unique and really, really precious.
In your forum that you just got out of, you talked about how you use platforms. Are you concerned about people who abuse Twitter?
Absolutely, and we are watching it very closely. And So are our users. Our users are also policing what's going on in the system. They're reporting, bad behavior. They're reporting things that look like it doesn't really help the system. It doesn't help the network at all. So we're listening, and this is just something that we have to do and constantly iterate on.
Talk about how you handle privacy issues. Of course, with any type of electronic communication, privacy is always an issue regardless of the platform. Specifically, are there areas of privacy that particularly concern your platform, and how do you deal with that, and how do you keep ahead of it?
I think these are concerns that are shared throughout many technology companies and also throughout many organizations. So we've learned a lot from other organizations. We've built a lot of this into our terms of service, and this is something that we're constantly iterating as well. But more or less, we like to take the stance where the user controls everything about their privacy, and as long as we give them those controls, then everything is good.
Do you make money with Twitter?
We do not have a revenue stream right now, but we are looking to make this something that's sustainable, and that does mean revenue, and that is something that the company is working very hard on determining what that future looks like.
And when you make those determinations, what kind of questions do you have to ask yourself?
Well, the biggest thing that the company has to ask is that, is this helpful for the network? Will this sustain activity? Will this sustain usage? Does it speak to what people are actually doing? If it does, what comes from that? So that's something that we ask all the time. With every feature we build, with every revenue model we explore, we're always asking, is this going to sustain usage?
Jack Dorsey of Twitter, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also attending the Government 2.0 Summit was Craig Newmark. You might know him better as the founder of Craigslist.
What have you learned about your company, especially in terms of privacy and issues concerning your site and privacy issues?
Well, nothing new for the company because on the one hand, I've been a member of groups like the Electronic Frontier Foundation for a long time. Only recently have I realized how much I learned about that from my high school history and civics teacher. On the other hand, you got to do the right thing for people who suffer from crime and all that, and that means you got to get good at that too. That's a balance we're good at. So that's something we've known for some time.
So as far as specifics, how has your company changed, your business model, how you operate the site? Has there been any significant changes?
We change very slowly. We've had a very good vision from the beginning of what we're about. We're strictly community driven, and we just got to stay the course.
And so as far as, since you are community driven, what happens as far as who puts information on your site, what kind of information is put on your site in terms of services, in terms of things to sell, that kind of thing?
People can put what they want, but they have to follow our guidelines. And we have this community flagging system, which makes the site self-policing, and that works pretty well. Not perfect, but like Churchill says, democracy has its weaknesses, but it's the best system we've tried.
In a sketch, how does that community policing work?
If you see an ad that's wrong for some reason, you flag it for removal. If other people agree with you, they flag it also. Get enough flags, it's removed automatically.
And is that done pretty consistently?
Seems to be done very consistently. Sometimes we pay a little attention to things ourselves. If someone emails me a problem, I'll take a look.
I was going to say, when is the point of your intervention, either personally or from your company's standpoint?
When it comes to me personally, my email address is craig@craigslist.org. That's one way to get my attention. And you know, my phone number is spreading among the law enforcement community throughout the country, and that's okay.
As far as people sending it to them, or you were working directly with them, how does that work?
All of the above.
How long has that been going on?
A couple of years or so. The deal is this is personal commitment. Cops, law enforcement people work hard. I want to have their back.
You're at a government conference, or at least where technology kind of meets the workings of government. Where does Craigslist fall in that?
Craigslist itself, not much directly. In spirit, something we're about is a simple platform where people help each other out, where people give each other a break, and where people work together to make things better for other people. In a way, that's what government is about. And the deal is, right now what government is becoming again is a place where what citizens need and want, what citizens have to say, matters. And something along the lines of working together You know, I've been in Washington a lot recently. I've spoken to a lot of people inside of government or working with government, and somehow a universal feeling is that what government workers does matters. What government workers does makes a difference. They say that's a new feeling, something they haven't felt for years, and apparently it feels pretty good.
When you say you're talking with people in government, who are you talking with, if not specifics, then agencies?
I've been speaking with the people at a number of different agencies and at the White House. In a way, my personal focus has to do with helping veterans, since I'm also a member of the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. As a board member, helping with social media, somehow I feel an affinity, feeling that, hey, if a person serves in the armed forces, that means they've committed themselves personally for me, so I should take that personally and reciprocate.
What's the best, if you had to, when you go to these branches of government, you talk about social media, whether it be your site or other sites, how would you advise them on how to use social media to reach out to people, the voters at home, people across America who may not have direct access here to Washington, D.C. or the ability to come here?
Well, I'm telling people that customer service done in good conscience is public service, and that agencies should reflect on the reverse. Public service involves a lot of customer service, and we should be working on better ways to serve our community, our public, no matter what we do. And the thing is, that's working. There are sometimes some government barriers to doing that. For example, if someone working in public-private partnership does a better job than what government does, then there should be some way to repair the regulatory or just rules burden to make that work better.
Craig Newmark of Craig's List, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, one of the stated goals of the Obama administration is to use technology to bring transparency to government. During the summit, we talked with the director of the White House Open Government Initiative, Beth Novak.
Beth Novak, how would you describe the Open Government Initiative?
Thank you. Well, the Open Government Initiative is really the Obama administration's effort to drive and coordinate policy on three things: transparency, participation, and collaboration, trying to bring unprecedented openness to the way that government works and to make government work more effectively by being more open.
When you just say more open, what does that mean?
So what does that mean? Let me explain a little bit more what I mean about these three values. Transparency refers specifically to making the workings of government, how we do business, more accessible and available to people, as well as the data and information of government available online, in public, and available also for people to download, mash up, analyze, visualize, etc. Participation refers specifically to working in ways that allow us to get better information into government, because we recognize that we don't have a monopoly on all the best information, and we need tools that help us to get that data and information back in so we make the best possible decisions. Collaboration is slightly different. It's not simply about getting people to come essentially to government, even via the internet. It's about taking government out to the people, taking the challenges that we face in common, whether they're about education or healthcare, and bringing them to the American people to look at strategies for working together on solving problems collaboratively.
So as far as those initiatives are concerned, what is the difference between what you want to do and then just having a series of websites that people can look at? And how do you make it more accessible to them as far as getting information to them?
Right, it's a good question. I think I want to be clear to emphasize that it's not all about the technology. We often get people say, oh, you're just making wikis and blogs and it's all about making a website. It's quite the opposite. It's about open ways of working. We have 24,000 websites in government, and it doesn't necessarily make the government more open. Decisions still get made behind closed doors, information still gets kept in a desk drawer, policy gets made by the same people. It's a very different thing to change the processes of government and the practices. In other words, to look at when we make a policy or make a decision, how do we actually go about consulting with people early in the process rather than late in the process, where we can still benefit from their information. We need web-based tools to help us do that, and not just websites, but some of the new tools like expert networks, social networks that allow us to find people and find their expertise and connect with them. We also need to look at new ways, for example, of how we give out money, whether it's through contracts in government or grants that we give out. How do we do that in more open ways that drive greater competition into the process, let people know about the opportunity to participate, give them a chance to collaborate with one another? And finally, how do we do a better job really of articulating the challenges and problems that we face getting that word out to people and inviting their ideas and suggestions for how to solve those problems. So the web is just the delivery vehicle in many cases, but it's by no means the ends, it's only the means.
How do you make it cooperative then if people do have comments about the kind of policy questions? Do they send you an email? Do you go to a Facebook page? Do they send you a Twitter? And how do you respond to them?
So let me give you an example. And let me first say that the White House Open Government Initiative involves a lot of people in it. We are just really a small effort that's designed to work with a much larger government on making this change happen in a distributed fashion, from the bottom up, if you will, so that every agency is now trying new ways and experimenting in new ways to bring this kind of openness to the way we work. But let me tell you what we did, for example, around just the issue of open government policy itself, this question of how should we be more open and what does that mean? Well, in addition to giving people a mailing address and giving people an email as a way to reach us, we also set up an online forum that invited people first to brainstorm, to share with us good ideas online in a short, simple fashion, little brainstorming bullets. Then we had a much longer discussion period in which we dove in and looked at issues in detail in a conversation with the American people. And then finally we moved towards a drafting phase where we actually invited people to help give us language, suggest specific words that we might use in crafting this policy. And so it was early in the days of the administration. I think not enough people knew about the opportunity, and we have to do a lot more to get the word out when we have initiatives like that. That's where new media tools like Twitter and other vehicles for actually just letting people know that this is happening, giving them an opportunity to participate, is crucial. And where this is just the beginning, really, of a model, of a way of engaging people more in how we work, that we're just, really at the outset of starting, and that lots of people have a role in making happen.
Do you have one centralized website where people can go as far as getting their involvement is concerned?
So the centralized website we've set up is www.whitehouse.gov/open. That's the website for the White House Open Government Initiative. We do our best there to get the word out, not only about things happening in the White House, for example, the release of all the White House visitor logs now, and a major change in our transparency policy, where we try to get the word out about things happening in the agencies, whether it's the FDA launching a new blog or the Consumer Product Safety Commission launching a new website. We try to get the word out there, through there and through the White House website, about things going on really all around the government. But it's also where we look to people like the folks at this conference, like the folks here in the room, to help us to spread the word using their networks, their mailing lists, their listservs, to help let people know that there's this opportunity to get engaged.
Beth Novak, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And finally this week on the Communicators, we'll hear from Jack Dangerman, the founder of Environmental Systems Research Institute. The company uses geographical maps to easily display information, and he talked about how the federal agencies could benefit from the technology.
Jack Dangerman, tell me what the initials GIS mean in your world.
Geographic Information Systems. This is a kind of system where people put geographic data into it.
So is this kind of, if I were driving along and I see one of these GPS units in cars that are so familiar, is that your technology?
It's connected, but it's not exactly the same. A geographic information system is like a financial information system where people have lots of records about money, but in our case it's about geographic stuff. So people add trees, they delete trees, they add roads, they delete roads, they add power lines, they delete power lines. They measure soils, they put it into this database. And then this database allows mapping views or spatial analysis views of that core data. So in many ways it's like any kind of other information system in the sense that it's transactional and maintained. But the viewability of that data is very intuitive. So people love maps, of course, because they can navigate around them and they understand things very quickly. So it's quite an interesting technology because it's so intuitive. And that's part of its appeal.
Who are users of your kind of technology?
We have about 350,000 organizations that use it. Everything from FedEx to NGOs in conservation, and then governments at local government level, state government level, national government level, and they manage the facilities. They manage the environment. They manage forests. People drill for oil with it. People locate stores, people like Starbucks or McDonald's or all these different companies, but also local governments, for example, manage all the land records with it, transactional updates, and I view it as a map. But they also manage facilities like water lines and where are they, so call before you dig. And the beautiful thing about GIS is that you can bring all of these layers of information together. So it's very much an integrative technology, cross-cutting. So when we talk about the federal government, we talk about stovepipes of data, like forest data, water data, environmental data, security data. But geography, as a platform for GIS, allows us to bring these layers together and see through them, not just visually, but also analytically. So I can overlay one layer on top of another and connect the geometries, which connects all the data, and see things. Well, this is a kind of data mining. It's a kind of way to do interpretations about the way the world works, and it also can be used for design and decision making and planning. Where should I locate? Where should I not locate? What areas are sensitive? What areas are particularly difficult from a security standpoint to protect? Where are the bad guys? Dots on maps are used by police departments all over the world to be able to know where to allocate things more effectively. In Maryland, the governor uses it to be able to predict or be able to understand where the problems are, like where do they have low grade score averages, or where do they have lots of potholes. And then he puts the money where the problem is. It's another overlay.
Because visually he can see exactly where the money needs to go.
And moreover, he's put it up on a website so that people can, normal citizens of Maryland can see where he's spending the money. He's putting money not where rich people are or like that. He puts money where the need is. And it doesn't really matter. He's very fond of saying it doesn't matter whether I'm in a wealthy community or a poor community, a white community or a black community, an ethnic community or not. I put the money where the need is. And this is a kind of transparency for government. It means taking data, spatializing it, and piping it into maps so we can see government policy.
Are they using it most efficiently, or what? And if not, then how can they use it in the future more efficiently?
GIS has been emerging for 40 years, first on mainframes, then on mini computers and workstations and PCs. Now it's going to the web platform. The web platform allows us to serve up maps from many different sources and bring them together by overlaying them very quickly. They call that mashups, using simple tools and new free viewers. That means geography and the ability to integrate data is opening up for everybody. What is required for that is that government agencies not simply put their data out like data.gov so that you can download it. I mean, you have to be pretty geeky to be able to take data and manipulate it and use it in some way. Rather, agencies should put the data up as services, like a map service that I can overlay one map on top of another map and bring it together, or analytic services. In other words, very easy to use, continuous, sort of like the consumer mapping sites that we see with search engines, but with all the rich authoritative data that government brings, and also data that's transactional, so it's changing with time.
Do you have people within our government right now, whether it be at the White House or any of the agencies, that are hearing your message, and are they applying it?
Agencies throughout the federal government, agencies use my software to be able to create or author data, and they're beginning to serve it. It's just a beginning trend. But just like the web, this is going to spread like fire. People will serve it, and consumers will become literate in geography and geographic manipulation. So I call it societal GIS. And in the White House, in the recovery.org organization, in a couple of weeks, they're going to be publishing a website, which is going to be recovery.gov, the next generation. They've worked very hard to be able to spatialize or put all of the expenditures, all the projects on the web. And that's going to open up for the first time to Americans where the money is going. Users will be able to pan and zoom and see projects. Is there a bridge to nowhere kind of thing in my neighborhood? And react as a result of it. They have problems, like the data is not as good as it needs to be. There'll be mistakes in the data. However, the big story here is it's a huge step to make government data available and do it in a visual form that mere mortals can work with and understand and play with and learn geography in a new way.
Jack Dangerman, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
If you'd like to see these interviews again or any of our previous programs on the Communicators, visit our homepage at cspan.org. By the way, next week, FCC Chairman Julius Genachowski will be our guest on the Communicators.